The marketplace of Carrion Prime was alive with noise. Stalls of strange metals, glowing crystals and caged beasts filled the streets. The air smelled of smoke and spice. Shouts from merchants rose above the crowd while guards with sharp spears stood on every corner. Among the crowd walked a single human. He was far from home, a traveler who had taken the wrong ship, ending up on a world where humans were rare, even feared. His name was Daniel. He kept his head down, hoping not to attract attention. But in a place like this, a human could never go unseen. Eyes followed him. Whispers moved behind his back. A human? What is he doing here? Careful, they bring trouble. He walked faster, ignoring the voices, trying to leave the market. And then he saw her. She was not like the others. Tall, with pale silver skin that shimmered in the light and eyes dark as a storm. A glowing collar of blue metal locked around her neck. Chains bound her wrists. She stood on a small platform, her expression calm, but her eyes were filled with silent fire. The merchants shouted about her value. The royal widow. Strong bloodline, rare genes. Who will pay the price? Daniel froze. Something about her gaze caught him. She looked at him, not like he was a stranger, not like he was prey. She looked at him as if he mattered. The crowd shifted and Daniel stumbled forward, almost falling onto the platform. His hand touched the chain at her wrist. Sparks leapt from the collar. A soft hiss sounded and then, click. The collar fell open. The marketplace fell silent. Every voice stopped. Every breath held, the widow's eyes widened. For the first time, her lips parted. You, she whispered. Then the shouting began. He removed the collar. Impossible, only a chosen one can do that. He has claimed her. Guards rushed forward, weapons raised. Alien merchants screamed in anger, some in fear. Daniel stepped back, confused. I didn't mean to, I didn't know, he shouted. But no one listened. The widow stared at him, her chains falling away. She touched her bare neck as if she could not believe the freedom. Then she looked at Daniel again. Her voice was soft but strong. Now, you are bound to me. Daniel shook his head. No, listen, it was an accident. The guards didn't care. Spears aimed at his chest. The crowd roared. Seize him. He has broken the law. The widow stepped forward, placing herself between Daniel and the guards. The chain of authority was gone, but her presence still carried weight. Her voice cut through the chaos. He is mine now. Gasps filled the air. The words spread like fire. He is her husband. By the law of our world, the bond cannot be undone. Daniel felt cold fear wash over him. Husband? He had only touched a collar. He wanted to escape, to run, but hands grabbed his arms, pulling him toward the waiting soldiers. As they dragged him away, he saw the widow's face one last time. She was not smiling. She was not afraid. She was watching him carefully as if testing his soul. The guards shoved him through the market streets, past towering statues of alien kings, past walls carved with old symbols. The city was beautiful but cruel, every corner filled with eyes that judged him. Finally, they threw him into a cold chamber of stone. The door slammed shut. Daniel sat against the wall, his heart pounding. He thought of Earth, of home, of the simple life he once had. Now he was trapped in a world where he was the center of some strange law he did not understand. From outside the chamber, voices echoed. The council will decide his fate. The widow's voice was softer but closer. You freed me, human. Now you cannot walk away. Daniel pressed his hands to his face. He had no idea what had just happened. But one thing was clear. His life had just changed forever, and somewhere deep inside, in the silence of that chamber, Daniel felt something else, a fear he could not name, and a destiny he could not escape. The chamber door opened with a heavy groan. 2 guards entered, tall aliens with armor of black steel and faces hidden behind masks. Their spears glowed at the tips. Human? One growled in a low, mechanical voice. The council waits. Daniel stood slowly. His hands were still tied, his legs weak from fear and confusion. He wanted to protest, to shout that this was all a mistake, but no words came. The guards shoved him forward, and he stumbled out into the wide halls of the palace. The halls of Carrion Prime were unlike anything he had seen. The walls glowed with patterns of living light, symbols shifting like moving rivers. Tall windows showed the city outside. Towers rising into the sky, flying ships weaving between them. It should have been beautiful, but every step felt heavy, like he was walking deeper into a trap. They led him to a great chamber, the Hall of Judgment. The doors opened with a deep echo. Inside, rows of alien nobles sat on high platforms, their robes glittering with jewels and metals. Their faces were sharp, proud, full of suspicion. At the center stood a raised throne, empty except for the glowing staff of authority leaning against it. Whispers filled the hall. The human, he broke the collar law. How is this possible? No outsider should touch the widow's chain. Daniel was pushed to the center of the chamber. The guards forced him to kneel. The silence that followed was crushing. Then the widow entered. She walked with calm steps, no chains around her now, no collar on her neck. Her silver skin shimmered under the light, and her eyes were unreadable. The nobles lowered their heads as she passed, though many looked away in anger. She stopped beside Daniel. "The law has been broken," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the chamber. "Or fulfilled." A tall figure stood, dressed in dark robes. He was the high judge, his crest of bone rising from his forehead like a crown. His voice was deep, booming like thunder. "By the oldest law of our people," the judge said, "the collar of the widow cannot be opened by any hand." Except her true mate, gasps filled the chamber. Some nobles shouted in protest. "Impossible! He is an alien, a human! The law was not meant for outsiders." The judge slammed his staff on the ground, silencing them. His eyes locked on Daniel. "And yet the collar is gone. This human has done what none of us could. He has claimed the bond. By law he is her husband now." Daniel's chest tightened. His voice finally broke free. "No, I didn't claim anything. I didn't even know what it was. It was an accident." Laughter, bitter and cruel, spread among the nobles. One shouted, "He is afraid of his own act." Another hissed, "Weak, unworthy." But the widow raised her hand and the chamber fell silent again. She looked at Daniel, her face calm but her eyes sharp as blades. "You may call it accident," she said softly, "but our law does not know that word. You freed me. The bond is sealed." Daniel turned to her desperate. "I don't belong here. I don't even belong to your people. I just want to go home." Her gaze did not move. "You cannot go home now. You carry my fate and I carry yours." The judge's voice returned louder than before. "The council must decide if the bond stands. If it does, the human becomes consort to the widow. If it is false, he dies." The chamber erupted in noise. Half the nobles shouted for his death, their voices sharp and angry. The other half argued, fearing what breaking the old law might bring. Daniel felt the weight of hundreds of alien eyes on him. His heart pounded like a drum. He wanted to scream that none of this was fair, that he had no choice. But deep down he knew it didn't matter. Fairness had no place here, only power and law. The widow spoke again, her voice cutting through the storm of voices. "He lives," she declared. "I choose him. By right of the bond, he is mine." Every noble froze. Gasps echoed again. Some bowed their heads, others clenched their fists in fury. The judge studied her face for a long moment. Then, with a heavy voice, he said, "So it is spoken, so it is law. The human is bound to the widow. From this day forward, he is consort of Carrion Prime." The staff struck the floor, sealing the judgment. Daniel's world tilted. He was no longer a lost traveler, no longer just a stranger. In a single moment, he had become part of a law older than he could imagine. The widow stepped closer, standing tall beside him. She leaned just enough for only him to hear. Her whisper was like a blade in his ear. "Now, human," she said, "you live in my shadow. Do not fail me or you will not live long at all." Daniel's stomach twisted. He could feel the truth in her words. She was not saving him for kindness. She was binding him to something greater, something dangerous. The chamber doors closed behind them as guards led him away. The nobles continued to argue, their voices filled with fear and rage, and Daniel realized with cold certainty that his life was no longer his own. The palace of Carrion Prime looked like a fortress of light. Its walls shone with silver stone, its towers reached into the sky, and banners of the empire waved in the wind. From outside it seemed untouchable, but inside whispers and shadows moved like poison. Daniel walked the long halls beside the widow. Guards followed at a distance, their armor black and silent. The nobles had left the judgment hall, but their anger had not left with them. He could feel it. Every corner, every glance carried the same message: "You do not belong here." At dinner that night, he sat at a long table of crystal and steel. Alien nobles ate glowing fruits and meats that shimmered with heat. Daniel barely touched his food. He could feel eyes on him from every direction. He heard their whispers. Look at him, a human consort. Disgraceful. He should be executed. Mark my words, he will not last the week. The widow sat beside him, calm as ever, drinking from a golden cup. Her eyes studied the nobles one by one. She leaned slightly toward Daniel and spoke in a low voice. You feel their hate? Daniel nodded. I don't have to feel it. I can hear it. They will test you, she said. They will try to break you. If you fail, you die. If you survive, they may still try again. Before he could answer, a servant approached, carrying a new cup of wine for him. The servant bowed low, his hands trembling. Daniel reached for the cup, but the widow's hand stopped him. Her silver fingers brushed the rim of the glass. Her eyes narrowed. Without a word, she set the cup aside. Drink from mine, she said. Daniel hesitated, then obeyed. The nobles around them muttered in annoyance. The widow looked at the untouched cup once more. The liquid inside shimmered strangely under the light. She whispered, almost too quiet to hear. Poison. Daniel's chest tightened. They wanted him dead already. That night, he could not sleep. His chamber was large, filled with alien designs, but it felt more like a cage than a room. He lay on the strange bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the silence. Then, he heard it, a faint scrape. The whisper of a blade. Daniel sat up quickly. Shadows moved at the edge of the room. A figure in black slipped through the window, silent as smoke. Daniel's heart pounded. He had no weapon, no training. The assassin's eyes glowed faintly under the mask. The blade in his hand caught the light as he stepped closer. Daniel backed away, grabbing the nearest thing he could find. A heavy metal vase. His hands shook, but he raised it anyway. The assassin lunged. Before the blade could strike, another shadow moved. The widow appeared in the doorway, her robe flowing like a storm. She moved faster than Daniel had ever seen. With a flick of her wrist, a hidden dagger flew from her sleeve, striking the assassin's arm. The blade clattered to the floor. The assassin hissed, turning toward her, but Daniel, driven by pure fear, swung the vase with all his strength. It smashed against the assassin's head. The figure fell to the floor with a heavy thud. Daniel stood frozen, breathing hard, the vase slipping from his bloody hands. The widow walked to the fallen body. She knelt, pulling off the mask. The assassin's eyes rolled back, his mouth spilling blood. With his last breath, he spat out words filled with hate. The Empire will never allow this union. The human must die. You both must die. Then he was still. The widow stood, her face cold, her dagger dripping. She looked at Daniel. This is only the beginning, she said. Guards rushed in, too late to stop anything. They bowed to the widow, ashamed. She waved them away, keeping her eyes on Daniel. You struck with fear, but you struck true, she told him. Remember this. Fear can kill you or it can keep you alive. Daniel's legs shook. They sent him for me. Just because of the law. No, she corrected softly. They sent him for us. Because together we are dangerous. Daniel tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. He looked at the assassin's body again, the blood staining the floor. He was not just a traveler anymore. He was a target. Later that night, as the body was taken away, Daniel stood by the window, staring at the alien city. Fires burned in the distance. He could hear the faint sound of chanting echoing from the streets below. The widow joined him, her eyes scanning the horizon. They fear prophecy, she said. Daniel frowned. Prophecy? She nodded slowly. Long ago it was written, when the widow's collar falls by the hand of an outsider, the empire will tremble. Daniel's stomach twisted. That's about me. Yes, she whispered. And that is why they will never stop hunting us. The city lights flickered outside. In the shadows of the palace, enemies gathered, plotting their next move, and Daniel realized the truth. His fight had only just begun. The palace was quieter after the assassin's death, but the silence was not peace. It was the silence of watching eyes, the silence of enemies waiting for their next chance. Daniel followed the widow through dark corridors lit by glowing stones. Guards stood at every door, but she moved with confidence as if no lock could ever hold her. Where are we going? Daniel whispered. She did not answer at first. Her eyes scanned the walls, her steps careful. At last she spoke, her voice soft, almost secret. To show you what no outsider has seen. If you are to live, you must understand why they fear you. They reached a door hidden behind curtains of silver cloth. With a touch of her hand, the stone wall shifted open. Inside was a narrow staircase spiraling downward into darkness. Daniel hesitated. "Why do I feel like this is a trap?" Her lips curved faintly, not quite a smile. "Because it could be. Follow or stay behind. Your choice." He swallowed hard and followed. The stairs led to a chamber deep below the palace. Strange carvings covered the walls, symbols that glowed faintly like fire under the stone. In the center of the chamber stood a massive slab of crystal, cracked with age, its surface etched with ancient words. Daniel stepped closer. "What is this place?" "The Hall of Prophecy," she answered. "Built before my empire was born. Only the royal line may enter. But now, you are bound to me, and the prophecy speaks of you." Daniel's eyes traced the glowing symbols. He couldn't read them, but they seemed alive, shifting as he looked. "What does it say?" She approached the slab, her fingers brushing the cracks. "It says, when the widow is unchained by the hand of the stranger, the old order will break. The bond will ignite war and the empire will fall." Daniel felt his chest tighten. "Fault be because of me?" Her dark eyes turned to him. "Not because of you, because of what you represent." "I don't represent anything. I was lost. I didn't choose this." "No," she said, her voice sharper now. "But prophecy does not care about choice." Daniel turned away, pacing across the chamber. "So that's it? They'll hunt me forever because of old words on a wall." The widow's gaze followed him. "Not just words, truth. My husband, the king, died because of betrayal inside the council. They feared the prophecy too. They thought killing him would break its path. But fate does not break." Her voice grew quiet, almost a whisper. "The same ones who murdered him now watch us. They will never stop." Daniel stopped pacing. He looked at her, truly looked at her. For the first time, he saw not just power in her face, but grief. "You loved him," he said softly. Her expression froze, but her eyes revealed pain. "He was my mate. He was chosen by law, not by love. But he stood beside me. He was strong. And they cut him down like an animal." Daniel hesitated. "And now, they want to cut me down too." She stepped closer, her presence sharp as a blade. "Yes, unless you stand as he did." A sound echoed through the chamber. Footsteps above, distant but rushing. The widow's head snapped up. "They know we are here," she hissed. Daniel's heart jumped. "Then let's leave." "No." She pressed her hand to the crystal slab. A hidden panel slid open, revealing a passage behind it. "This way." They slipped inside, the wall closing behind them. The narrow tunnel was dark, only faintly lit by glowing moss. Their footsteps echoed softly. As they walked, Daniel whispered, "Why are you showing me all this? You could have left me to die in that court. Why save me?" Her voice was low but steady. "Because if you die, the prophecy dies with you. And then I die too. My enemies will make sure of it." Daniel frowned. "So I'm just protection for you?" She stopped, turning to him in the dim light. "At first, yes. But you also broke my chains. No one else could. Not even my own kind. That means something." Daniel met her gaze. For a moment, the tunnel was silent except for their breathing. Then voices shouted in the distance, echoing down the tunnel. The widow grabbed his arm, pulling him forward. "They are hunting us even here. Move." They ran through twisting paths until they reached another hidden chamber. This one was smaller, filled with old weapons, blades that glowed faintly, shields of strange metal. Dust covered everything, but Daniel could sense power in the room. The widow lifted a blade, its surface humming as it touched her hand. She held it out to him. "Take it." Daniel stared. "I don't even know how to fight." "Then learn," she said coldly. "Because soon you will have no choice." He took the blade, its weight strange but solid. He could feel it vibrating in his hand, alive. The widow's eyes softened just for a second. "Do not fear the prophecy, Daniel. Fear the ones who try to stop it. They are worse than fate itself." Before he could answer, the sound of armored boots echoed closer. The enemies were near. The widow raised her own blade, her silver skin glowing faintly in the light. "Tonight you see my world as it truly is. Betrayal above, prophecy below, and shadows closing in. Choose now, human. Run and die, or stand and fight beside me." Daniel gripped the weapon tighter, his fear burning into something else. He had no idea if he could fight. But he knew one thing. Running was no longer an option. The first explosion shook the palace before dawn. Daniel woke to the sound of shattering glass and screams outside his chamber. The floor trembled under him. Smoke drifted through the open window. He rushed to it and saw the sky burning. Alien warships hovered above the city, black shapes against the rising sun. Beams of fire struck towers, turning them into rubble. The streets filled with panic. Civilians running, soldiers shouting, alarms howling across Carrion Prime. The widow entered his chamber, her face calm but her eyes burning with fury. She wore armor of dark silver, her blade at her side. "The enemy has come," she said. "They demand your life." Daniel's throat tightened. "They're attacking the city. Just for me?" "They fear the prophecy," she replied. "And they would rather destroy everything than allow it to live." Guards arrived at the door, bowing quickly. "My lady, the council is in chaos. They call for the human surrender." The widow's voice was sharp as steel. "Tell the council, they may surrender themselves, but not him." The guards nodded and ran. Daniel stared at her, fear choking him. "You're protecting me against your own people. They'll turn on you," she met his eyes. "They already have. This war is not only about you, it is about me. If they take you, they take my life as well." The palace shook again. Dust fell from the ceiling. Outside, another tower collapsed, fire spilling into the streets. The widow grabbed his arm. "Come. There is something you must see." They hurried through corridors filled with soldiers preparing for battle. Horns echoed, calling warriors to the gates. Daniel saw fear on their faces, but also determination. At last, they entered a hidden chamber beneath the palace. Unlike the Hall of Prophecy, this one was alive with strange machines. Towers of crystal pulsed with light, their energy humming through the air. At the center stood a massive console shaped like a weapon, its surface glowing faintly. Daniel froze. "What is this?" The widow's voice lowered. "The throne's secret, a weapon built from ancient times. Only the bonded consort may awaken it." Daniel shook his head. "You mean me?" "Yes," she said. "If you refuse, the city burns. If you accept, you will be hunted until the end of your days. Choose." Before Daniel could answer, a hologram flared to life above the console. It showed the enemy general, an alien warlord with crimson skin and eyes like burning coals. His voice thundered through the chamber. "Widow of Carrion, give us the human and we will spare your city. Keep him and your world will burn." The widow raised her chin. "You fear him because of prophecy. That means he is worth more than a city." "My answer is no." The warlord's laugh echoed like fire. "Then watch your empire fall." The hologram vanished. Daniel felt his stomach twist. "You're gambling everything on me." "What if I can't do this?" The widow stepped closer, her hand brushing the console. "Then we both die. But I would rather die fighting than kneeling." Suddenly, the chamber doors burst open. A group of nobles stormed in, their faces twisted with rage. Guards followed them, blades raised. One noble shouted, "This ends now. We give the human to the enemy and the war ends." The widow's blade flashed as she drew it. Her voice cut like lightning. "You speak of surrender while the city burns? Cowards." Another noble pointed at Daniel. "He is not one of us. He is an outsider, a curse. Give him up!" Daniel stepped back, heart racing. For the first time he realized the war was not only against enemies outside the walls. It was also against traitors inside. The widow raised her blade, but Daniel moved forward, surprising himself. His voice trembled, but it carried across the chamber. "You think giving me away will save you? They'll kill me, then they'll kill you too. You'll lose your city, your empire, your freedom. I didn't ask for this bond, but it's real. And if prophecy is true, maybe it's the only chance you have left." The nobles hesitated. Some sneered, some looked uncertain. One spat at the floor. "Then let prophecy kill us all." Before they could act, another explosion shook the palace, knocking many to the ground. The widow seized the moment, her blade raised. "Go or die where you stand." The traitors fled, their courage breaking. Daniel looked at the glowing console again. His reflection stared back at him in its surface, fearful, unsure, but alive. The widow's voice softened. The war drums sound. "The enemy is at our gates." The council crumbles. "You are all that remains." Daniel's hands shook as he touched the console. Light surged under his fingers, brighter and brighter until the whole chamber glowed. The machines roared awake, their hum filling the air like thunder. Energy shot upward, spreading through the palace, through the city, into the sky. The widow's eyes widened. "It listens to you," Daniel whispered almost to himself. "God help me." Above the city, Alien warships turned their weapons toward the palace. The first beam of fire lanced downward, only to meet a sudden shield of light rising from the weapon Daniel had awakened. The blast shattered against it. The city below gasped in awe. For the first time, Carrion Prime fought back. The war drums thundered louder, and Daniel realized as the sky lit with fire that this was no longer survival. This was war. The palace groaned under the weight of war. Outside its walls, fire lit the night sky. Warships rained destruction upon the city. The shield Daniel awakened still burned above, but it shook under each strike, flickering with cracks of light. Inside the palace, the air smelled of smoke and blood. Soldiers shouted orders running through the halls. Servants fled. The walls themselves seemed to tremble. Daniel stood beside the widow in the war chamber. Maps of the city glowed on the table before them, red marks spreading across it like bleeding wounds. "The shield is strong," a general reported, his voice urgent, "but it will not hold forever." "The enemy is inside the city now." Their soldiers march for the gates. The widow's eyes narrowed. "Then we hold the gates." Daniel looked around the chamber. Fear was on every face. The generals, the guards, even the servants, they all stared at him, the outsider, as if waiting for him to fail. He clenched his fists. "If the shield fails, can the weapon fight back?" The widow shook her head. "Not without more power. You touched it, but it will not answer to me. It waits for you alone." Daniel's stomach twisted. He wanted to refuse to run, but the war outside left no choice. The palace gates shook as the first battering ram struck. The sound echoed through the halls. Daniel marched with the widow toward the entrance, surrounded by guards in black armor. The corridor stank of fear. Behind them, the console still hummed faintly, light pulsing like a heartbeat. They reached the grand hall where soldiers gathered, blades drawn, shields raised. Above the tall doors, banners of the Empire waved, torn by the wind. The widow raised her blade high. Her voice rang out, "This is our world. Stand, fight, or fall as slaves." A roar answered her. The soldiers slammed their weapons against the ground, the sound rolling like thunder. Daniel swallowed hard. For the first time, he felt not just fear, but something stronger. A spark of courage. The gates burst open. Enemy soldiers poured inside, armored in crimson, their weapons glowing with fire. The clash was instant. Blades struck, shields cracked, screams filled the hall. The floor shook with the force of battle. Daniel ducked as a blade swung past his head. Instinct pushed him to lift his alien weapon. It hummed to life, bright with strange light. He swung wildly, and to his shock the blade cut through enemy armor as if it were paper. The widow fought beside him, her movements swift and deadly. She was a storm, cutting down enemies with precision. "Stay close," she shouted. Daniel obeyed, his fear driving him forward. Again and again he raised the weapon, each strike fueled by desperation. But for every enemy that fell, more came, then betrayal struck. From the side hall, a group of palace guards turned their blades not on the enemy but on their own. "Traitors," a soldier cried just before being cut down. Daniel's blood ran cold. The council's whispers, the nobles' hatred, it was true. Some of them had opened the gates from within. The widow's fury exploded. She cut through the traitors with a cry of rage. "They will burn for this!" Daniel fought beside her, but the weight of the battle pressed harder. The grand hall was chaos, smoke, blood, fire, and betrayal mixing into one storm. The widow grabbed Daniel's arm. "We cannot hold them here. To the consul, now!" They retreated through the halls, enemy soldiers on their heels. Flames licked the walls and the palace shook under bombardment from above. At last they reached the chamber of the weapon. The crystal towers glowed faintly, their light dimmer now. The console pulsed weakly as if waiting. The widow pushed Daniel forward. "It will only answer to you. Touch it again. Give it power." Daniel stared at the machine. His hands trembled. "I don't even know how." "Then learn now," she snapped. "Or we both die here." The doors exploded open. Enemy soldiers flooded the chamber, their war cries filling the air. Daniel turned, his blade glowing in his hands. The widow stood at his side, defiant even as the enemy closed in. "Do not stop fighting," she whispered. "Not until your last breath." Daniel looked at her, this alien widow, once a stranger, now his only ally. He nodded. Then he slammed his hands onto the console. Light exploded through the chamber, brighter than fire, brighter than the sun. The weapon roared awake. The towers shone like living stars. The enemy soldiers froze, blinded by the brilliance. And Daniel felt something deep inside him, like the machine was reaching into his soul, pulling his fear, his anger, his will to live, and turning it into pure power. Outside, the city shook as beams of light shot from the palace into the sky. The enemy warships were struck one by one, exploding into fire. The shield above the city grew stronger, glowing like a second sun. But inside, the battle raged on. Daniel and the widow fought against the soldiers who had already entered. Blood and fire filled the chamber. Daniel's arms ached, his body trembling, but he kept fighting. For every strike, the weapon seemed to grow louder, brighter, hungrier. At last, the widow shouted over the chaos, "The weapon is awake, but it will demand more. Brace yourself, human. This is only the beginning." Daniel's vision blurred with light and smoke. The city burned, the palace crumbled, and the weapon thundered like a living heart. And in that moment, he knew. This was no longer about survival. It was about destiny. The sky of Carrion Prime burned with light. The weapon Daniel awakened thundered across the heavens, its beams tearing through the enemy fleet. One by one, crimson warships exploded into fire, raining metal and ash onto the city below. The streets fell silent. Soldiers and civilians alike looked upward, their eyes wide with awe and fear. For centuries, no one had seen power like this. And at the heart of it all, inside the palace chamber, stood Daniel, his hands still pressed to the glowing console. His body shook, his breath ragged. The weapon was not just energy. It was alive. It demanded his strength, his will, his very soul. "Daniel!" The widow's voice cut through the storm. "Enough, release it." He pulled his hands away. The light dimmed, though the shield above the city still held strong. Daniel stumbled back, his body weak, his arms trembling as if drained of blood. The widow caught him before he fell. Her silver eyes met his. "You did it. You saved the city." But Daniel only shook his head. "No, this isn't over." Outside, the enemy soldiers still fought in the streets, though leaderless now. The widow commanded her guards to strike them down. The traitors within the palace fled like rats, hunted by loyal soldiers. Slowly, the chaos quieted. At dawn, the palace gates opened. The widow and Daniel stepped onto the high balcony, looking down at the city below. Thousands filled the streets, soldiers, nobles, civilians. All had seen the weapon's light. All had seen the prophecy alive before their eyes. The crowd fell to its knees, their voices rising in a single chant. "Husband of the widow. Husband of Carrion." Daniel froze. The words rolled like thunder through the streets. He looked at the widow, searching for denial, for correction. But she only stood tall beside him, her expression unreadable. "Why are they calling me that?" he whispered. Her voice was calm, heavy with truth. "Because you are. The bond was sealed when you freed me. Now the Empire sees you as my mate, by law and by prophecy. You are consort of Carrion Prime." Daniel's chest tightened. "I never wanted this. I just wanted to go home." The widow's gaze did not soften. "There is no home for you anymore. You are bound here as I am. Our fates are one." Later, in the quiet of the war chamber, Daniel sat with his head in his hands. The weight of it crushed him. The lives saved, the lives lost, the strange destiny forced upon him. The widow entered, her armor streaked with blood and ash. She looked at him for a long moment before speaking. "You did not run," she said. "Even when death came for you. That is more than many of my people can claim." Daniel laughed weakly. "I didn't fight because I was brave. I fought because I had no choice." Her eyes narrowed. "Choice or not, you stood. That makes you dangerous. To them and to me," he looked up. "To you," she stepped closer, her voice quiet. "Do not forget. Prophecy says our bond brings the fall of the Empire. Today you saved it. Tomorrow they may still see you as its doom." Daniel shivered. "Then what happens now?" The widow turned to the window, watching the city smolder under the rising sun. "Now we rule." Her words were heavy. Not an offer, not a request. A statement. Daniel stood slowly, joining her at the window. He saw the ruined towers, the smoke rising from broken streets, the thousands kneeling below. This was not a victory. It was the beginning of something larger, something darker. "They'll never accept me," he said. "They already have," she answered. "Not from love. Not from loyalty, from fear." "That is enough," Daniel shook his head. "Fear won't last forever. The widow turned to him, her eyes sharp, her voice almost a whisper. Then give them something else. Show them strength. Become the prophecy they fear, and they will follow you even if they hate you. That night Daniel stood alone in the chamber of the weapon. Its glow was faint now, like the slow heartbeat of a sleeping giant. He touched its surface gently, feeling the hum beneath his palm. Was this his destiny? To rule a world that was not his? To be the center of a prophecy he never asked for? He thought of Earth, his home, his family, the life he had lost. For the first time the memory felt far away, like a dream fading in the light of morning. Behind him the widow's voice broke the silence. The Empire bows today, but do not be fooled. Some still wait in the shadows, some still plan for your death. You are safe only as long as I stand beside you. Daniel turned. And if you fall? Her eyes glimmered. Then you must learn to stand alone. Outside, the city rebuilt under the shadow of fire. The people whispered his name, some with hope, others with hate. The prophecy had been fulfilled, but in a way no one fully understood. And far beyond the skies of Carrion Prime, in the blackness of space, unseen eyes watched. Other empires, other powers, other enemies. For the universe had heard the prophecy too, and the husband of a widow was no longer just a human. He was a threat,